Hello and welcome back to the 1904 Club, the Hull City podcast from the Hull Daily Mail. And I guess as we head into the final few days of the summer transfer window, there's plenty to talk about. So luckily, I've grabbed some company with my coffee. There's no Prutz today, unfortunately, a little bit of a situation, so he's had to pull out. But we've got Fletch and Burnsy. Burnsy, we'll start with you. How the devil are you, old boy?
All right, I'm as always looking forward to the chat. We're into the final week of the transfer deadline, and I'm looking forward to, because I know you've been chatting to Adjun, so I'm looking forward to finding out what's going on. I'm looking forward to talking about Liam Cooper and what you and Fletch make of that, and lots of reaction to that, all that sort of stuff, and talking about the game. There was a game in there as well. And I feel like I might be in a minority of one by thinking that was a decent point in the context of everything, the slowly building. I know people were, nodding off and everything like that. It wasn't the most exciting game in the world, but, I'm looking forward to the chat. I've rambled on a bit there, and I know Fletch I can tell he's tensed, he's ready to go.
I've gone back.
That's life in Scarborough. That's what it does for you. How are you, Flower?
I'm all right. And I've gone for those who aren't watching, I've gone for the Tony Pulis stance again today. I've stuck the phone on top of the bookcase because it's the only place I can get a connection. But yeah, all good. I've got another football fix today. I'm off to Chester. But it's nice to talk City again because Scarborough has been literally every day of my life for the last 4 weeks, which is nice. But it's nice to keep dropping back in to talk about the black and amber.
And we send our best wishes to Captain Prutton today as well. So, yeah, let's start with, we'll come to the game later on because I know there's plenty to talk about and there's a small matter of that trip to that absolute shed on Saturday. So we'll come to that in just a few moments. But let's start with the big talking point, I guess, that came out of Saturday. And that was there were two interested onlookers in the director's box. Again, it seems to have been a theme across the last few home games. Potential new recruits watching the game from the very public viewing gallery. So Liam Cooper was there, former Leeds defender, former Hull City defender, of course, born in this parish, and Gustavo Puerta, the young Colombian midfielder who appears to be closing in on a move to the club from Bayer Leverkusen. Burnsy, I'll start with you. Liam Cooper, I think it's fair to say, if you and you have to be careful, of course, because social media is never well, I don't think it's a good place to start with fan comment and whatnot. Particularly if you're looking for stuff that's not either bile or passionate or vitriolic. But there was a lot of negativity around Liam Cooper being at the ground, and obviously the news that we put out on Facebook Live to start with, and then backed it up with the story to say that the club are in talks about bringing him to the club on a permanent deal. What's your initial reaction to that, Burnsy?
Yeah, we talked last week on the 1904 Club about a lack of experience with Seri going. Now, Liam, I've known since he was a youngster, or I'm not a great pal or anything, but I've known him. I've seen him. I saw him make his Premier League debut for City at Liverpool, and I think Fernando Torres scored a hat-trick in a 6-1 win for Liverpool. But he would bring that experience. Couple of promotions. He's promotions at Leeds, promotion at Chesterfield, Scottish International. But there was definitely a mixed reaction. Philip Bexley says Cooper will be a great add experience for youngsters like Hughes, and I take that. But there was a lot made. Some fans are obviously wound up by the fact that, he said, I've always been a Leeds fan, and there's quotes from him in the past about being a Leeds fan and everything like that. From a purely footballing point of view, my only question is, has he still got his legs? That would be my only question. Otherwise, I think, in terms of experience, knowledge, it's a squad that's still light. To me, he'd be a reasonable addition, but I don't know whether he's still got his legs. And you'd need it. But you look at what he's done at certain periods in his career. He's been in the PFA Player of the Team of the Season, the EFL Team of the Season. Played well under Bielsa at Leeds. I know it's some time ago, but Is it definitely happening? Because it's they've not confirmed it yet, have they? Baz, definitely happening.
It sounds like it. I think the club were a bit taken aback. Well, one or two at the club were a bit taken aback by the reaction to it on Saturday night. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because this fans put an awful lot of stock in what players say, and the quote that everybody's referring to is the one that dates back to, I think, 2019. So what, 4 or 5 years ago, where he referred to coming from Hull, coming from a family of Hull City fans, and him being the kind of the one that broke the mould in not supporting the Tigers and supporting Leeds United, which didn't go down particularly well at the time. In my relatively short time covering the football club, I've always been aware of every time I've seen Liam Cooper's name pop up on social media, it's always largely been negative because of those comments he made. Fletch, do we need to, as objective people, do we need to try and move on from that and put that, and just think, well, he's not going to go to Leeds and say, oh yeah, by the way, I support Hull City, blah blah. There's a million and one of these cases, I guess, throughout history where players have gone to a club and gone, yeah, I've always supported this football club. I bleed black and white, or I bleed red and white, or whatever it might be. Where are you at with it?
Well, look at it this way. He said before that he's always supported Leeds United, but if his heart wasn't in this move and he despised the football club and had, he loved Leeds that much that he picks and chooses which clubs he wants to go to based on his affinity of who he supported as a boy or as a teenager or even now, then he wouldn't come, would he? Let's be honest. He wouldn't sign for the football club, and he'd put all that to one side. I think the fan base really should too. We shouldn't be holding grudges from 5 years ago. At the end of the day, what football supporters pay money for in terms of a Saturday afternoon or a Tuesday night or whenever it is now is performance and results. I feel that social media now it speaks louder than it should, because I feel like a minority of people on social media can say something which gets inflated superbly, and there's individuals on social media who will bear a grudge and will stir the pot and whatnot. But as I said at the top of my summary, if he didn't want to come back, he wouldn't come back. So from a heart point of view and a head point of view, he probably thinks this is a good move. I just worry about, as Burnsy says, his legs, because he's without a club, so he won't have had a pre-season unless he's done his own thing. He's going to need a good 4 to 6 weeks to get up to speed anyway. But he would be a good mentor for people such as Hughes.
JP. Oh, yeah, sure.
I was just going to say, I think 2 points. I think the fan thing, and we're all guilty of this. We all live in an ideal world where every player that we sign supports our football club and loves our football club to pieces and would never think of going to rivals. That's just not the reality of it, unfortunately. And I think, let's be fair, Abdouche, I did an interview with Abdouche, I think it was out in Turkey, and he admitted he'd never even heard of Hull as a city, let alone a football club, Hull City, until Adrian had spoken to him. And it came through Adrian. He'd never heard of the football club. And I don't, you have to put it in perspective. I'm not sure that players like Puerta will be too aware of Hull City until that conversation happens. There are some players, of course, will be aware of the football club, students of the game that know that the football club had the FA Cup final, the spells in the Premier League, etc., and all sorts of other things. But a lot of players won't have heard of Hull City. So I do sometimes wonder if we as fans, and we are all fans at the heart of it, we do put a bit too much focus on what players may or may not have said a long time ago to appease the players, the fans that are paying their wages. So, and also the second point, Burns, I'm coming to you, was that Liam Cooper is not going to be coming in as a start. He's not going to be coming in and starting on Saturday. That isn't his role. I think will be, yes, he will be needed, I guess, at times within the season, but his role will be one of helping out the more experienced players like Louis Coyle in that dressing room. So I don't, I don't feel that we're suddenly going to expect him to come in and play 42 games. Burnsy, go on.
No, I was just a lot of reaction, as you said at the top, to the 1904 club. JP Hull in Asia says, great role. This is on Cooper. Great role model football-wise for young Hughes and Burns. JP Considine says, Cooper only really makes sense if McLaughlin is off. Allows Hughes to come in alongside Jones with Cooper and Burns as cover. JP also says how much, I think it's JP, how much he enjoys the podcast, and is it says, good men, love the podcast. It's a great listen and great company driving to work. I suspect you might need a deadline day special on Friday, though. I think Baz has plans for that.
Well, you're out on the last one,
lots of messages. Alan Parkinson says Cooper would be a good acquisition to an average squad. We've several young players who could learn much from the likes of Cooper. He's free, but depends on his wages. We probably talked enough about him, but I take the JP's point about, does it mean McLaughlin is off? Is he still on somebody else's radar? Is he likely to go? Because at the moment he seems one of the key players to me. I've not looked at the stats, but he seems to get a lot of the ball and pops up in areas you wouldn't normally expect the centre half to pop up in. What's going on, Baz?
Yeah, I think that's one to watch over the next few days, isn't it? Realistically, I think going forward, you'd have to say that the choice back two would be Jones and Charlie Hughes. So that relegates McLaughlin out of the team. And then if you've got Liam Cooper coming in as well, and you've also got Finn Burns, who can play either as a central defender or as a six. We've seen him as a six, as well, since in the short spells we've seen of him since he came from Manchester City. So I think the McLaughlin one is one to watch. I really do over the next few days. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that interest is there. And, as we know, we're getting into, the sort of the 11th hour, aren't we, of the window as a whole. And a lot of things are happening now, not just at Hull City, at clubs all over the shop in the Premier League and in the Championship. And I suspect that if Cooper does sign, and it isn't done and dusted, but if he does sign, then you would think that would free up a space, because they've also got to be careful of, we've gone from a situation where they had about 3 players to having a squad that's starting to get numbers in it, and you don't want to be carrying a massive squad of players that are sat in the stands, and you're paying them decent money to be sat in the stands twiddling their thumbs and not playing. So I think that's one to watch. But back on Cooper, it's interesting because I've had this conversation with Tim Walter quite a few times throughout the course of the summer about experience, about particularly with Seri going, but not just with Seri going. You look at the players they lost in the summer. There was a lot of experience there, a lot of Championship nows. And I'm not saying you need to pack your squad with players 30 plus that have played 500 games in the Championship, not at all. But you do need, and I think we'd all agree, you do need one or two players that have got that have been around the block a bit. That when you 1-0 up away from home somewhere, you need somebody, you need a bit of nous to head and kick it and to be clever. Also, there's just so many benefits to having players that have played a lot of games, and they are worryingly light. And Tim said to me only last week when we were talking about Mika going, and he said, "Oh, I don't agree with you. I think we've got experience." He was like, Charlie Hughes has played 70 odd games. I'm like, yeah, but he's still only 20. So his version of experience is different to the rest of us, and that's his prerogative. He's the manager. He's paid a lot of money. I don't agree with that. I think they need 2 or 3 players that have got a lot of experience. Fletch, where are you at with that?
Well, I think I've said before, it's based really on you say that it's involved to saying that Charlie Hughes has played 70 odd games. It depends on the number of games you've played at a certain level. And Charlie Hughes hasn't played at Championship level, has he?
No, he hasn't. And also, you might have played 70 odd games at League One, and that's fantastic. And I'm a big Charlie Hughes fan, and I want to see him in the team quickly as long as he's ready for it. But he's not had the life experience at 20. He's not played 500 games. He's not had that level of experience that a Seri had or a Cooper's had. If we can park all the noise around the Leeds and Hull situation, If we look at his games, he was a captain under Bielsa that won promotion to the Premier League. There's nobody in City squad that's got that level of nous and experience that can impart that onto not just the young players, Charlie Hughes, but Louis Coyle, for example. Louis Coyle hasn't done that in his career.
They're big mates.
Other players haven't. Say again.
They're big mates, apparently.
Yeah,
they're big mates.
They are really big mates. They are really big mates. But City don't have that level of. Louis is a League One winner and a terrific skipper, but he hasn't won promotion to the Premier League. So I think that type of experience, as long as it's at the right price, that the wages are okay, and that Cooper is going to come in and offer something, and not just sit on his backside and claim a paycheck for the next year or 2 years, however long he's going to be at the football club. As long as he comes in and can offer something, be it on the pitch and also on the training pitch and in the dressing room, I'm all for it. What I don't want this to become is, bringing in 2 or 3 players over 30 just for a payday, just for the sake of it. They've got to be able to add something. Fletch.
Quite agree. Fletch, just because I want to ask you a question. Mike Bonewell just says, don't forget Aaron Connolly was at the Bristol game too. Nothing came of it either. And Andrew Evans says, Reed Cooper is experienced Premier League Championship. He's a local. That isn't a reason to buy or play him. Like all new recruits, I'll respect the club who they choose to bring in. Not for me to decide, he says. I'll judge all players on their performances, not where they're from or who they support. The other one, Fletch, on Saturday was Gustavo Puerta. Give us a feeling of what you know about him, what you feel about him, because I had a look at his record today and it surprised me a little bit.
What surprised you about Burnsy, before I answer?
He's not very experienced, is he? I mean, everybody talks about Leverkusen, and I think he played 46 minutes last season. 7 appearances, didn't make a start. He did start at 3, I think, in 2 Europa League games. But
I suppose to put a comparison there, though, Tyler Morton didn't play on any minutes, did he, previously when he was on loan from Liverpool, and turned out to be a real breath of fresh air and someone you built the team around. So Puerta is a player who's got plenty of youth level internationally with Colombia. And I mean, look at Xavi Alonso's Bayer Leverkusen last year, absolutely stormed the Bundesliga. So again, it's this premise of, as Baz has been talking about with Liam Cooper under Bielsa, you've got some incredible mentors and tutors that you can feed into, and he'll be a player that's probably, okay, he's got no emotional connection with the football club, but he will have ability, which again, you have to be coached from a young age and get that natural ability out. And now he'll want to be a player who I imagine is itching to just get as many minutes as possible to, rubber stamp his mark on Championship football before going on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, I'm not bothered about emotional attachment to the club. That comes, that grows. It's whether they're decent footballers, whether he will turn out to be somebody that you think, oh, the fans get emotionally attached to because he's a decent player. Is it happening, Baz? Because we've seen players at the club and not happen. Is it happening?
It sounds like it, yeah. It sounds like the medical was done last week. As we know, he was at the game on Saturday. It feels like that's just a matter of time in getting that. I think there's a will from the player to do it. He feels that this is a good next step in his development of getting noticed for bigger things further down the line. I know we talked with Prutz, didn't we, about City being a destination club rather than a stepping stone club. But there are going to be players that want to come here as a destination. There are also going to be players that want to come here to further their career, and that's that. As long as it works for both parties, that he comes and he plays well, fine. So I would suspect that gets done over the next 48 hours or so. In terms of his experience, again, he's the skipper of, I think, the Colombian under-20 team. So that's a decent accolade. That shows he's got
defensive midfielder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, good.
It's going to be interesting to see where he fits in, because you've got obviously Regan, who I thought was better on Saturday.
Agreed.
You've got Regan, you've got Zambrano, who we saw a bit of on Saturday, showed some nice moments, got in a couple of pockets of space, but also The game did pass him by at times, the speed of it and the intensity, which is understandable, absolutely understandable. And you've got Jonas Meffert, if that's a deal they can get done now. That isn't easy. Hamburg are digging their heels in as well they might, but you've probably seen the interview I did with Adjon. He's again spoken openly about wanting to do it. So it's just a case of the clubs trying to agree. I wanted to ask you, Burnsy, actually, does that the fact that he's gone through pre-season with Tim Walter, largely with Xavier Simons as his kind of defensive midfielder, and he gets to the back end of the window and realises, oh, actually, I want Meffert, who's my kind of trusted lieutenant from Hamburg. Does that say that he's not seen enough from Simons in games, that he feels that he needs to go to play it safe and go and get somebody that he knows and trusts?
Oh, definitely for me. I think the midfield, having looked at Saturday, there's nobody there in the midfield that's controlling a game. No. You're right on Slater. I thought he had a better game, looked more at it, looked more comfortable in terms of where he was, but he was sort of drifting wide right. But I like to see a midfielder in there that's going to control the game, get the foot on the ball, make it happen. Fletch?
Just to say there, Ben, so you're talking about a midfielder wants to control, but some numbers that I sent in our little group chat on Saturday, I was keeping abreast of what was going on. And the tactical style of bringing the ball out to the fullbacks on either side, they get so much more of the ball. It's almost as if the central midfielders are bypassed almost. Zambrano in 45 minutes got 15 touches. Now, I'd have to dig into the numbers of last season, but I don't think Seri would have gone, or whoever was playing alongside him, Morton, would have gone 15 touches in one half of football against, with all due respect to Millwall team that are very direct and only had a quarter of the ball throughout the entire game.
They've had that in the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, I don't think the tactical style is to go elsewhere on the pitch, which
do they not need a central midfielder? Do they not need somebody?
They 1,000,000%. Their midfield for me hasn't worked. It's not worked up throughout pre-season. It hasn't worked at any point this season. They've been. I come back. I don't want to dwell on it too much because I've tried to get it out of my head. But that first half at Plymouth was ridiculous, and they had no control in that first half at all. They didn't really have much control, I didn't think, on Saturday, and that allowed Millwall to get forward quickly. Watmore and Honeyman. Oh, look, George, I miss George. I love George. It allowed Watmore and Honeyman to get in the pockets outside, in between halfway line and the edge of the box. They were creating chances, creating good moments. For me, the midfield is just non-existent, and it's a problem for him because it's not giving them any control in the game. In transition, they're not having any control there. They're not moving the ball quickly enough over time. So I think they need a dominant number 6, somebody that can pick the ball up off the back four, pick the ball up off the goalkeeper if need be, and drive them forward. There's no. Is
that you describing Meffert? Is that what he is?
Well, I can't. I'd be lying if I sat here and went, "Oh yeah, he's this, that, and the other." He seems to be the player with that kind of ability that can shield like a Rodri, that type of. Obviously, we're talking levels here clearly, but in that of what you expect from a midfielder, somebody that can dictate play from the back from deep, and and I know he wants his team to play further up the field and he wants his centre halves coming to the halfway line and even his goalkeeper, but you still need that midfielder that can protect the back four, that can pick up the second balls, because they weren't doing that either. At times in that first half, they were better in the second, and get the ball moving quickly, and that's part of the reason he's got rid of Seri, because Seri can do that, but probably not quick enough. They want somebody that can pick the ball up and zip it quickly because he wants to be going forward. Everything on Saturday was slow, backwards and sideways. It was really, really tepid, and they didn't play quickly enough.
Right, just so we think Meffert's the midfielder, Puerta another midfielder likely to come in. We'll because I know you've talked to Adjon, but we'll come. Let's start with the one. We'll come to what he wants in a minute, but I'm interested in the surprise. Who's the surprise? He's talking about a surprise. Who's the surprise?
Yeah, well, it's
What
my
position
understanding.
are we talking?
Yeah, it's my understanding that, as I reported on Thursday, I think it was. Yeah, anyway, they all merge into one. A goalkeeper. So, and I know a lot of people go, What? We've just signed. We've got Pandor. We've just signed Rachopi from from Young Boys. Why on earth do we need another goalkeeper? But I think it's a fair question when you've got two already. My gut feeling, without saying too much, is that an opportunity has presented itself that the club, Adjun Tan, Jared Dublin, and the manager and everybody else, feel that is an opportunity that is too good to refuse. Now, it isn't done and dusted yet, and I think there's a fair bit of interest in said goalkeeper. But my feeling is if they could get that, it isn't Carl. No, it's not Cardallo. My feeling is if they could get this deal done, it would be it's a deal that you would look to do. I think because I think it would. Again, I need to be careful here, but if they could get it done, you would do it because it would make a big difference to the spine of their team. So that is, for me, from what I gather, that is I think there's, and Adjun he gets very excited at this time. He gets very excited anyway, but he particularly coming in when I asked him about deadline day, his face beamed. He is like a kid in the sweet shop when it comes to this time of the window because he gets excited. So I think I think it was yesterday. I put something out from him that he promised a surprise. He's promised an exciting sign. Look, they are sound bites, and they are sound bites. And some fans say, "Well, he said that before." He's etc. He's just look. I think he's an excitable owner. He wants to excite. He wants to get the fans excited. It's always in the eye of the beholder. One person's surprise is another person's not surprised. So we'll have to wait and see. But what I would say, and if I've sort of scribbled down the team on my invisible notepad. If they get the players that they're after, if they all come off, suddenly they have a very, very good championship team on their hands. If they don't, well, we are where we are. But if they get,
I would love it. I would love it, Baz. Sorry, I would love it if you just flicked that piece of paper up and all those players' names had been visible to the camera. That would have been the greatest insight ever.
Yeah.
Do we need to get the feather duster out again, Fletch, and tickle it out of him in terms of because I suspect the young man knows here.
All right.
Can you build a picture? I know you're bound by confidence and everything like that. So it would be fair to you. Can give us a little picture of is the keeper Premier League experienced?
He's I don't think he's got a huge amount of Premier League experience, but he's very experienced. I can't go any further, and it is frustrating because I'd love to be able to report everything that I know, and unfortunately, in this job, there are times when you have to sit. You get told a lot of things, and you have to sit on your hands. And unfortunately, you pay the price because invariably, somewhere else, that story comes out, and you will, having known about it, somebody else will be, in theory, first to put it out. But that is the game that we have to play on. But Burnsy, you'll be acutely aware of that as well. You get told a lot of things.
Of course, yeah.
And a lot of it.
What about the striker? Because I think they need more than one striker personally. But there's been talk of a striker. Fletch is back. He just popped.
I was looking for the feather duster to tickle Baz with. I've gone to the cupboard in my spare room.
Yeah, you've got a special cupboard. I don't doubt that. Just the striker, Baz. Yes. What do we know? And do you two agree they actually need more than one striker with Oscar on his way to Mexico or wherever? What do we know? What do we think?
I think realistically, you struggle to get more than 3 frontline strikers. So they've got Chris Beddier, who I thought looked decent. He obviously came close to scoring with a wonderful effort. You've got Mason Burstow, who couldn't really get into the game on Saturday, but did create himself a wonderful chance. And you have to give credit to Lucas Jansen because he made a great stop to deny him. Which, if that goes in, I think Burstow probably hits the ground running. His confidence is flying. He looked a bit. If you saw this, Burnsy, but and the fans that were a lot closer than I was, but when he came off, he looked a bit downtrodden as he walked down into the technical area. He looked a bit frustrated, a bit disappointed that he was coming off. But they look, yeah,
that's a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd want more strikers. The striker that from what I gather, they've got 3 names. They've got. I'm loath to say a first choice because if that doesn't come off, then you're like, oh well, he's a second choice. We didn't want him. We didn't really want him. Yeah. They've got 3 strikers that they're actively pursuing, and I think if they get the first 2 choices, well, sorry, one of the first 2 choices, I think that's better than Tommy Conway. And obviously, we know they went for Tommy Conway. They couldn't quite get him because he wanted to go to Borough. I'm sure Borough's lovely at this time of year. But I put it this way: I'm excited by the 2 players the 3 actually, but the one they're trying to get, the one they're trying to get is there's a lot of competition for. But if they can get him, and it will cost a lot of money, then great. But as with anything, that there's a lot of clubs scratching around, and everybody wants a striker. So the selling clubs have got the upper hand here because they can pretty much name their fee, and it's whether the teams that want the players are prepared to pay the fee. But if they get particularly one of the 2 players that they're after, I think I would never dream of speaking on behalf of a fan base, but I would think I'd be fairly confident in saying that a fair percentage would be very, very, very happy with either of the 2 targets, either of the 3 targets that they're trying to get. If that makes sense. Help me out, Burnsy. Take me away.
Can I ask a quick question?
Got his hand up. Go on.
I just want to ask a really quick question, which creates a bit of debate, and that is, we've spoke about how tight finances can be with FFP and whatnot. Do the club feel that they wish they had done this sooner because we're getting towards deadline day and that could inflate the price?
Yeah, I think you'd always. It's a difficult one, isn't it? And I think, look, speak to any manager or any owner, and they'd all much rather have all their transfer business done three days before the players return for pre-season training. The reality of it, particularly when you're Hull City in the Championship, that just isn't possible. You might get 1 or 2 in, and I know we were very critical of their business early on, but the reality of the piece is a lot of stuff does tend to happen, in the other half of August, and I'm not convinced that either of the 2 players that I'm thinking of specifically here were available, 2 weeks ago or a week ago. I think the 2 players concerned are starting to become available now. And because of that, they are going to have to move quickly, and they're going to have to work very, very to get either of these 2, potentially the 3rd one. They are going to have to work exceptionally hard and pull off a big deal because there is significant interest. But they've done it before, and Adrian is, as he said to me on numerous occasions in the last 4 or 5 days, that he's now involved. He's heavily involved. He's almost fronting up negotiations, but Tan and Barry Pardo and Jared Dublin will be doing that as well. But he is speaking to players himself. He is trying to sell the dream of Hull City himself. I think that if you've not seen it yet,
in fairness to him, he's good at that. Judging, in terms of the profile of some of the players we've seen. Is Stansfield on the list at Fulham?
I think Stansfield. I think it's no secret that he's a player they've looked at, and I think I would suggest if any team in the top half of the Championship needed a striker and Stansfield was available, and he suited your system, that's important. You'd be looking at him. Why wouldn't you be? He's young, he's hungry, he's come through a fantastic academy. He's worked under Marco Silva. It'd be folly to not be considering making a move for him. And we know he's on their list because we've spoken about him before. So if Fulham are prepared to let him go, Birmingham still think they've got a damn good chance of getting him. But I'd like to think if a player of his caliber was available, you'd be looking at him. But yeah, I mean, I was just going to touch on. I don't know if you've seen it yet, or I'm speaking to the crowd here, but spent ages on the other day typing up a transcript of some of the stuff that Adrian said, and I think in that he does refer to the fact that he's involved and what he's using as a selling point to potential new recruits. Talking about not only is Hull a beautiful place to be, is East Yorkshire, the best part of the country to be, but also, Hull City is a football club. They are great, that they look after their players, they pay them well, but the progression is huge. He talks about Delap, he talks about Greavesy, Jaden Philogene, all going on and playing in the Premier League. Carvalho going back to Liverpool, playing in pre-season, getting himself a £30 million move to Brentford. Even like Zarori. He used Zarori as an example that he's gone back to Burnley, but he's now got himself a move to the top French league, and so that's a big USP for the club when they're competing against perhaps more fashionable clubs that maybe have got a perceived better location and maybe more central in the country, closer to London, for example. They're using every trick in their book and every bit in their armory to try and convince very, very good players to come and play at Hull City.
No, we're going to talk about the game and where the team are at a minute, and we've had lots of stuff coming into the 1904 club. No Prutz today on the 1904 club. He's otherwise engaged. Something popped up last minute, but it's Burnsy, it's Baz and Fletch for you. Thank you very much for taking the time to find us wherever you find your podcasts. And a couple of right wingers, Adrian was saying to you. Do they need two right wingers? Yeah. They certainly need one, but do they need two?
I'm not sure. I think one with Will Jarvis. I don't know what you thought, Burnsy, but I really liked Jarvis when he came on. Yeah,
he was exciting going forward, but he kept hitting the first defender or hitting the keeper with the crosses. I was just like, come on, son. You've got in really good positions. You've worried them. Where's your end product? Come on.
Well, that was the thing, wasn't it? It changed. In some ways, it changed the game because City's one attacking outlet in the game was Miller, and Millwall knew if they shut that supply line off, they basically stopped playing because Abdush on the right is completely ineffective. Suddenly, Jarvis came on. It gave them balance. It gave them more balance for one. It freed up Miller a bit because Millwall didn't need to stick three players on him. They had to come across to Jarvis. There was that one where he touched it. He faced up the defender, touched the ball around him, and ran past him, and as you say, so you get right to the byline
at the end of it.
Nothing, and that's for me the problem with Jarvis. He's got a lot of promise. He's got pace. He's direct. He puts defenders on their arse, which is always great to see. But you need something at the end of it, and ultimately there is nothing at the end of it. And I think that's probably why they feel that they need two more rather than going one more and then sticking with Jarvis. Jarvis needs what Jarvis needs. If City can get the two wingers they want, which they're confident of doing, although one of them is they've got a battle on their hands, but I'm fairly confident they can get it done. If they get those two in, send Jarvis out to a higher level than Shelbourne, with respect to Shelbourne, because that was great for him, and he might be annoyed because he's been brought back from a loan to be sent back on loan. But I feel Jarvis needs now to make a step up and play at a higher level than Shelbourne and get that end product, because that is the key. He needs, if he's going to be a success at this level. And at the minute,
same for Harry Vaughan on the left, I'd say.
Yeah.
Sorry to put in. They both need loan spells for me. There's no point. Like, I've seen Harry Vaughan's name pop up on the under-21 squad last couple of weeks.
Yeah, he's got to go on loan. He's got to go on loan. He went to Bristol Rovers last year. It didn't for whatever reason, it didn't really work. I know their manager was saying that he's a great kid, great lad, but he needs X, Y, and Z, and he needs a loan. For me, I know this might be controversial, but I think Matty Jacob needs a loan. I've said it before. Someone like Rotherham, where it's rough and tumble, and you think he'd be challenging at the top end of the division for promotion. I know they lost at Wickham, and Steve Evans was doing Steve Evans things after the game, but I think Matty Jacob is a way away from being a championship defender, and I think he would benefit from going out on loan and playing 40 games in League One. But that's another story. But yeah, I think Jarvis and I wouldn't be. I think Vaughan needs to go out on loan. I think Sellers Fleming is another one. I think he's bright.
Yeah.
But again, if they get a striker and two more wingers, you've got Abdu. I think they can afford to let Sellers Fleming go out on loan, particularly until January, and maybe reassess, get him playing games, because he does. It's all right being in and around the first team and playing 10 minutes here and 10 minutes there, but young players need
to build
no
momentum.
No, that Sellers Fleming I like him. He's got a lot of potential, but that potential for me isn't going to be realised playing 5 minutes here in 10 minutes. And because they're out the cup as well, that for me is a nightmare, because it would have been great this week
for them to go.
Yeah, well, it would have been great on Wednesday night or tomorrow night even to have had a cup game. I know whether it was Grimsby or wherever, you could have brought in with Choppy again. You could have played Hughes. You could have played Zambrano. You could have given Sellers Fleming minutes, Beddy minutes. And that's while managers might be happy to be out the cup early. For me, that's a problem, because when you've got all these new players coming in, even Puerto, if he was to have signed in time, and Cooper's another one, you could have got all those players a competitive game and given them an hour or respect it or whatever it would have been, giving them exposure. Now they haven't got that opportunity, and all they can do is play bounce games or in training, and then you're having to throw them into the heat of battle in the Championship, which for particularly young players like Zambrano and Hughes and Puerto, if and when it gets over the line, that's a big ask, isn't it?
Because I'm conscious of the time, and we need to talk about the game and the performances and where they are. And there's a lot coming into the 1904 club. You talked about loans going out. So Adjan is saying to you, 2 right wingers, a striker, a midfielder, and a surprise goalkeeper. And you mentioned loans going out. Any Premier League loans, would they be covering those categories, or would they be in addition? Because he's talking about Premier League loans, isn't he?
Yeah.
Baz?
So based on what, I'm just looking at my list here. So the goalkeeper would be a loan, right? So that's one. And that would be potentially a Premier League loan if it gets done. We'll have to wait and see. The 2 midfielders, well, Puerto technically is a loan, although it would be an obligation, not an option, an obligation to buy based on certain criteria. And I'm guessing that would be performance related, but also the success of Hull City, I guess. So Meffert would be permanent. So there's 2 loans there. So you've got your goalkeeper and Puerto loan. Zambrano is also a loan at this stage. So that's 3 loans. And you've got Finn Burns, who's a 4th loan.
Right. You've got 1 loan space in a match day squad. Is it still 5?
You've got the 2 wingers would both be permanent. I know one is definitely a permanent. The other one I'm 99% sure would be a permanent. And the striker is also a permanent. So that would leave 1 potential loan spot. So I know there was some, and I've seen it from the bits I see on my Twitter, lots of questions about the specific numbers. I reported last Thursday, I think it was, that I expected a minimum. I did say minimum. I made sure I threw that in. A minimum of 6 new signings. Now Adjan said 5 or 6 in his interview with me. So the goalkeeper's 1, 2 midfielders, 1 includes Puerto, 2 wingers, and a striker. So there's your 6. Obviously, Liam Cooper is in addition to that, so that would be 7 if they all come off. But there's no guarantees all these will come. This is what they want to do. There's no guarantees that all these are going to get done. There's no guarantee the striker will get done. There's no guarantee that the 2 wingers will get done. That's what they're trying to do. But as always, transfers are bloody complex. They're a nightmare. So many different people involved, so many different clubs involved. And it's a race to try and get them over the line. So we're going to have to wait and see. But that's the makeup. So just to clarify, for those that keep asking, goalkeeper 1, 2 midfielders 3, 2 wingers up to 5, striker equals 6. Liam Cooper would be in addition to that, so potentially 7 if they all come off. And there's, what do we work out, 1 loan space available?
17 signings in 1 window.
Yeah, I mean,
they needed it because they were the squad was on
definitely.
the bare bones of its backside, wasn't it? So they needed it. Just because I am conscious of the time, and we'll talk about the game. Ryan Giles going out, or is that settled now?
I think the feeling at this stage is that he's going to stick around.
Good.
I hope that's the case. I don't think he's looked overly happy in the games I've seen from him so far, but that that's just my perception. I could be completely miles off it. Middlesbrough still want him, and we're going to have to wait and see. My gut feeling at this stage is he probably sticks. He's probably here. I thought Tan's comments to Mike a few weeks ago were really interesting. How he called on Ryan to show, kind of prove that he wanted to be here and show kind of the spirit that the club had shown in trying to sign him. I think it's been difficult for everybody. I think there was an expectation at the start when he signed that he was going to go straight back out the door to Middlesbrough. For a couple of reasons, that clearly hasn't happened. Maybe that's affected Ryan because I think he thought he was going to be going. Middlesbrough thought he was going. It just hasn't happened. Now, I can't sit here and say it's not going to happen. I think that probably the odds at this stage are on him sticking around. But again, we all know what can happen in the final hours of you get to Wednesday, certainly Thursday, Friday, and who knows what's going to happen. So anything is possible.
Should we move on to the game, and if anything else transfer-wise pops up? James Lockwood says to the 1904 Club, City are a group of individuals getting to know each other at the moment. You simply cannot make that many changes to the squad and expect a cohesive team. With that in mind, it's a positive that we're not losing. Fletch, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that, because you don't get harmony straight away, do you? Everyone's got to work out each other, both tactically, mentally, how each other ticks in the dressing room, this, that and the other. So, yeah, that's going to take some time. Okay.
Sorry, we lost him there. The only harmony you're getting is your hairspray, isn't it? Richard Eglin says...
So it is hairspray
that's one for a certain generation, that. Richard Eglin says they're undercooked at the moment, still a rebuild with all the new signings bedding in and more to come. He says, I suspect Giles is on the way to Middlesbrough, hopefully for what we paid. Drame looked more effective, technically out of position when he came on. Cooper is underwhelming, if true, by the way, says Richard Eglin. And Gary Cushney says, I watched the fast-passing warm-up pre-match, and it was obvious watching who'd adopted the new style and who hasn't. There was at least two players struggling who started. And Chris King says, it's very early days, 12:30 kickoffs are rubbish. Game was awful. Worst of the three for me. Louis Coyle is good and a better player than some give him credit for, and an excellent captain. Just on the Liam Cooper thing, going for Liam Cooper is a mistake on many levels, including ability. We've talked endlessly about Liam Cooper. Let's talk about the game. For me, for some fans, it seemed the most exciting thing about Saturday's game was the tracksuit top the manager was wearing. It was,
it's striking, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, here we go. I was almost reluctant to introduce that, but the kit people were getting very excited about it. In terms of the game, I'll say what I said in a tweet on Saturday night. I thought that was another decent point in the context. He's still getting the squad together. They're still learning what he wants to do. Yes, it wasn't edge of the seat stuff, but they're unbeaten. It's their first clean sheet. I know Millwall had lost and conceded a fair amount of goals, but I suspect they came with a bit more defensive mentality because they wanted a clean sheet. They've scored 5 goals in the league. They won at Portsmouth in the League Cup. So I think all in all, in the context of where they are, that's not a bad point for me. I know it wasn't exciting, but also, and I don't understand football anymore, if the referee gives that Stonewall penalty, then, providing they score the penalty, then, they might win the game. Bas, where are you at with
it? I'm not convinced at the minute. I've got to be honest. I need to see more. I need to see a lot more. I reserve judgment until we get back after kind of Sheffield United. I think is the yardstick for me. I'll start to make an informed opinion then when I know what the team is, how the squad looks, what they've done in this next few days. For me, I'm not overly impressed. I've got to be honest. From what I've seen, there were moments in pre-season that I got really excited about. That excitement hasn't really translated into what I've seen so far. on the point you made about Millwall, yeah, Neil Harris came into he was almost like Tigger when he came into the media conference afterwards, buzzing with a point. He said he challenged his players to keep a clean sheet, given the fact they shipped 3 at home to Watford and then 4 at Bristol City, albeit having been 2-0 down. They came back and almost got a point, but for Scott Twine. He was very, very happy with a point, although he felt that they could have won it with, I mean, Tom Bradshaw had that header first half he should have scored. So that was probably the best chance of the game. The penalty one should have scored as well, shouldn't he? Yeah, he should have done. Yeah, and somebody of Bradshaw's quality, you would have expected him to do that. On the game, they've had in the 3 games for all this promise of attacking football. So in the 3 league games so far, they've had 39 shots at goal. They had 11 against Bristol City, and they've had 14 apiece in the last 2 games. They've hit the target 11 times, which I mean, my maths is worse than my 5-year-old. So unless I've got this wrong, my rough estimate is that's a 28% success rate of hitting the target. They hit the target 5 times against Bristol City, 2 at Plymouth last week, and then 4 on Saturday. So there's clearly a problem there with not so much creating moments, but actually hitting the target and getting shots away. They are a team. I'll come just 1 minute, Burnsy. They for me are a team that are completely reliant just now on individual brilliance. We nearly saw it from Chris Beddy's overhead kick. When I've looked at the other 3 teams that we've played so far, and also to a point Sheffield Wednesday's reserves in the cup. Those 4 teams have looked okay going forward. We've looked okay in glimpses. I haven't seen enough, and the lack of creativity in the middle of the park is a problem. But that's potentially because Abdush is shoved out wide right. Tim Walter said to me, to the media after the game on Saturday, yeah, we know that's not right. We know that's not working. Well, okay, but you keep doing it. Yeah, if you know from the outset Abdush on the right isn't going to work. My question, and maybe I'm being a bit simplistic here, why do it? But I'm not a football manager. What you were going to say, Burnsy? Something?
No, I was just I was going to ask Fletch something. Just in comparison, I don't want to hark back too much to last season, but that was a problem in terms of getting shots on target and things last season. Ashley Lodge says to us, the system does not use the number 6 or play through central midfield. Zambrano was open for a 5 to 10 yard pass on multiple occasions to break the press. Either need individual play, creativity requires players, or system players. Mellon and Abdush don't seem to be on the ball enough. I think that's a fair point. Where are you at with it, Fletch?
Yeah, I think your centre midfield is your engine room. It not only helps get the defence organised when you're out of possession, but it obviously builds things and is the creative element going forward. And they're just not utilising it enough for me in the first 3 games that I've seen. Part of the, unorthodox style that we've seen in the first 3 matches. If you're bringing in players of quality like Zambrano, you've got to give them the opportunity to express it, and then you can compare and contrast. I just feel at the moment it's very overcomplicated still in going forward. But then if I can just read some comments really quickly, Harry says, why are we so reluctant to pass to the number 6 during build-up? Another one which we haven't discussed is why we're still taking short corners when they don't work. Andy Mitchell, I look at the midfield. When we get the ball, Slater and Malem go wide, meaning when we are down the right, we have Coyle, Slater and Irma all within yards of each other. Nobody inside or down the channel. It's the same on the left. They end up each other way. Why do you think that's the case? And then Mike Smith says, when are we going to score first? Which is an interesting one, because I feel when they've conceded, the game has opened up more favourably for them, and that's allowed them to then be more expressive and get those goals late on. But for me, they haven't looked like a team that's taken the game by the scruff of the neck. No,
they haven't. Funnily enough, Saturday was the first time, and I'm conscious that we shouldn't look too much at pre-season results, but if we take those, including those as well, in all the games that Tim's been manager or head coach or whatever you want to call it, Saturday was the first time they'd not conceded first, and it was also the first clean sheet they've kept. In every single other game, be it friendly or competitive, they've conceded the first goal and obviously not kept a clean sheet. So hopefully going to that place on the Yellow Rose Shed on Friday night will give them a bit of confidence, because they're going to come under some severe pressure. But for me, Burnsy, I don't know what you thought, but I'd love to see Louis Coyle's running stats, because, you know, and he's not the only one. They do an awful lot of running around in their own half for absolutely no reward almost all of the time. There were a couple of moments that they broke through the press and they attacked, but generally they're like McLaughlin's the same. They sort of run around in circles a lot, get to the halfway line, come back full 360 and go back to the goalkeeper, who then has to panic because he's being closed down and the press is on, and he's having to shovel it wide. And there's so much effort for the sum total of zero, so much. And I feel, I don't know. Look, I'm conscious that this is the third game of the season. It's a new manager in a different country with a brand new set of players that are still learning on the job. New players coming in all the time, so that makes it more difficult. But I just feel that they're overcomplicating something that doesn't need to be overcomplicated. I feel that it's all well and good having a zany philosophy and trying to play this, that, and the other, but it's all right if there's an end product, and there isn't an end product. You know, they've had 11 shots on goal 11 shots on target in 3 games against, with respect, Bristol City, Plymouth, and Millwall. We're not talking Burnley, Leeds, and God knows another team at Middlesbrough, or a team that were challenging last year. They're playing 3 relatively average teams, and they're not creating anything. 39 shots in 3 games. Okay, well, that can be you've shot from 40 yards and it's gone off the corner flag and got that. It's 11 shots on target, and they've scored 2 goals. And one of them was a penalty, and the other one was a worldie from Louis Coyle. That, for me, is a concern. They're dominating the ball for the most part, but they're just going around in circles in their own half. They're not carrying any real threat. And for me, it's just like, what's the point? What is the point of playing all this fancy, coming out and going, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do... Ultimately, football is a dead simple game. It's get the ball forward as quickly as you can, get a shot, a goal, and score a goal. And that's how football games are won and lost. And at the minute, they're not losing. Yes, they've drawn 3 in a row. Great, they've not lost. But they don't look like winning any of those games. Not one of those games have I come away gone, I thought they should have won that. They deserve to win that game. They could have got a penalty on Saturday. They should have had the penalty. But they didn't deserve to win the game. They didn't deserve to beat Bristol City. They didn't deserve to beat Plymouth. And that... we're only 3 games. So I'm getting concerned. I am concerned from what I've seen. I'm not seeing enough. But equally, I'm also caveating it by saying we are only 3 games in, and we have got. There's been so much churn, and it is going to take time, and they are having to learn in front of 20,000 odd people and us as well.
Fletch, I think somebody's going to need to give him a cuddle. He's on one there. I just think this is to some extent what I expected, that it was, it was going to be a work in progress. He's changed it. There's been a huge amount of churn. It's going to take some time, but it's modern football. It wasn't necessarily anything different under Liam last year. There was a huge amount of farting around at the back in terms of slow build and everything like that. I think they're quicker this time, but you want to see the defenders see a lot of the ball. You want to see your more creative players on the ball always. That's what they get paid the big bucks. The defenders see a lot of the ball, but I just think you're going to have to give it a bit of time. It might be 10 games before it. Hopefully the penny drops. It might not drop at all. You don't know. The manager's still an unknown quantity in this country, but you've got to give him a chance and see. I thought they should have won on Saturday, and the penalty and the overhead kick. I'm still sticking with that's a decent point, and they're making progress. Ultimately, I may turn out to be wrong, and it doesn't happen for them. But I think you have to give it time. Fletch.
I still think, from what I said before the game, I still think Millwall are going to be down at the wrong end of the table, and I think that. You look at these 3 games, and we're going to be speaking here in May, and it's going to be, well, that game, and August in general was maybe where you could have picked up 6 to 8 points, which makes a big difference in the league. I'm dragging this opinion all the way through pre-season into this. I still think that it feels unnecessary almost. Well, I feel like we've taken a big step back when our ambition is to go forward into the Premier League and into the playoff places, and I just feel like we've now got to by a season where we're going to be going into next year. Yes, they'll be well gelled, if but I just don't see why we needed to do it, and that is still my belief.
Well, he's done it. It's no use crying over spilt milk, is it? He's done it. He's made that decision. He has to live with it. The question is, can they keep in touch till sort of January and then know what they need? Can Tim Walter get his system into the players, get the right personnel, and build through the season? Because that's the expectation. Everybody think the expectation from the club will be top six. The reality of the situation, none of us know. But I'm definitely of the opinion you've got to give it a bit of time.
But where they are now, I think the prediction for me going into these games is Tonkt is too strong, but I think one of these two games is going to be quite nasty.
Well, that was my next question. And this was the thing we all said at the start of the season: getting through August and getting to the first break was key, relatively intact. I think if they'd have beaten Millwall, I think 5 points from the first 3 games, given the churn, the change, all that sort of stuff, I think would have been a very good return. After all, Leeds have only got 5 points. My worry is that they've from games against Bristol City, Plymouth, and Millwall, they've got 3 points, right? They've now got Leeds away on Saturday, which, with the best will in the world, is going to take some Herculean effort for that team that's been fairly okay in games against three fairly average mid to lower table, and in Plymouth's case, relegation threatened teams already. They're now going to play a team that were beaten in the Championship playoff final, won an absolute canter at Sheffield Wednesday last week. Can you really see them getting anything? And then they've got the break, which is important because it gets, all the new players some time on the training pitch. But then you've got a Sheffield United team at home. I mean, you're going into Leeds with 3 points. Burnsy, can you see them getting anything at Ellen Road? Because
why not?
Yeah,
I can see them getting a point.
Did it?
Leeds are not.
Nigel Adkins, didn't they?
Yeah, Leeds are not fully formed yet. I can see them getting a point. They've had a clean sheet. Can I hold my hands up? I thought Panda had a good game Saturday. In fairness, he's growing, and I still don't think he's got great presence. And if you can upgrade and they can get the surprise keeper in, then you do it. But I'd feel sorry for him. I think he's done all right. Certainly on Saturday in terms of what I see. But there's no reason why they can't get a point. They're working hard. They seem to be buying into it. Why not get a point at Elland Road? They could get absolutely battered, but they could get a point. They might nick it. You don't know. It's too early to tell. So let's see what happens. I'm conscious of the clock.
Burnsy has been the voice of positivity on the 1904 club this afternoon.
Weird, isn't it?
Whatever time it is today.
Fletch, aren't we?
Final thoughts?
If they get a point at Leeds, that'll be decent because you remain unbeaten. But just they need more time to gel, and hopefully they gel sooner rather than later.
Let's see what this week has got in store, because no doubt by the time I've got this turned around, published and all that sort of stuff, it'll probably be out of date because they may have signed somebody or a signing may have gone somewhere out. You never know. Suffice to say, I think it's fair to say this next few days is going to be long. It's going to be busy, tiring, all those sorts of things. You can always keep in touch with us, of course, across all the platforms now. We will have everything we can. We'll bring you all the updates that we can, all the news we can, the interviews we can. Over the course of the next few days, we'll have a mammoth shift for you on whatever day the Friday is, whenever that is, at the end of the week. Here's hoping that by the time we next meet. Say again?
It's the day after Thursday.
Yeah, this last couple of weeks I've lost all track. I'm sure we'll get together and dissect what they do or they don't do, or who comes in, who doesn't come in, who leaves or who doesn't leave. It's going to be fun. Burnsy, any final closing thoughts before we head off into the ether?
No. Well, let's just thank you for all the messages. There was loads of messages. We're only scraping the surface of the messages we're getting to the 1904 club. So thank you very much for that. So
thanks, Burns. Thanks for your time. And Fletch, good to see you as always. We'll see you again soon. And good luck to Scarborough.
We'll try. We'll try.